Okay, so this is a little bit of my own take on how this all adds up and becomes the story of me in a sort of unbroken chain of lifetimes, or broken chain of lifetimes, I guess. It depends on how you look at it. Um, so that's, firstly, I told you what I dreamt and experienced, had visions of firsthand. And then, secondly, I told you about basically messages from mediums about my past lives. Now, this is my own take on how it all ties together, possibly, and some other um, lifetime interests that I have, or time period interests that I have. So I'm kind of showing you my notes a little bit here, but just for something to look at. So in addition to these lives, I feel a distinct connection to the Viking Age, and that maybe is that Scandinavian reference, or Russian reference, because the Vikings were the Rus who settled Russia, and they are Vikings too. So again, we don't know the location or what that, nationality would be now, Norse, or Russian or whatever, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, even parts of Germany it could have been. So my interest in the Viking era makes sense too, given that information. The two can match, or do match in some ways, and could be the same lifetime, right? That interest I have in the Viking Age. I do feel female, and I think I mentioned that I scryed and did different divinations and stuff to get more information about that lifetime. Now these, I haven't explored these a whole lot, but I feel an immense connection to Tudor England. I read a lot about it. I've studied a lot about it. I watch, anything documentary-wise I can find about the way people lived during those time periods. I've had, and as I'm saying this, I kind of had some visions of homes that I learned later were Tudor-style homes, with kind of like the white plaster exterior with the big wooden beams to mark geometric patterns and stuff, the Tudor style. Yeah, I've had dreams and visions of that, actually. Also feel connection to the Edwardian era, turn of the century, early 1900s. I feel female in that lifetime too, I think. I'm not 100% sure there, but I am fairly certain that I lived early in the 1900s, prior to the life as a soldier in Vietnam. Now, I also, and this one's strong, y'all, this is really a big part of who I am, I feel like. I feel connected to the early settlement of the Appalachian Mountains and the era surrounding the Civil War, possibly before it, possibly during it. But there's that huge connection there to Appalachia, or Appalachia. Y'all, I'm country, you just have to forgive me as I'm saying these words. It's possible, I suppose, that the early settler connection that I have could be the same lifetime of the dream I had in childhood of being on the large ship, right? Early settlers traveled the Atlantic, they arrived here, and that journey across the Atlantic had to have been terrifying, had to be monumental, had to be life-altering. And some didn't survive it, obviously. It would have been less than ideal. So I don't know if that's true, but there's a possibility there. I mean, in a way, it would make sense that that could be the same lifetime. And I don't know if I died on that ship. In my dream as a kid, I've always just been miserable and afraid. I haven't really experienced drowning. I never saw water coming in the boat. I never saw, actual wreckage going on. Just the feeling of fear and sickness and dread and that sort of thing. So maybe that's how early settlers felt during that passage. Very well could be. As for the being there against my will part. I'm not sure what to make of that, because I always thought in that dream that I really didn't want to be on that ship. Someone was forcing me to be there. And if that's the case, um, I don't really feel like I'm a slave or anything. I wouldn't be wearing a big billowy skirt probably, and I really feel cared for in that situation. I feel like someone's providing for me, and I feel like someone has good intentions for me, but maybe they just don't match my dream for myself. And there's a feeling that maybe a strong male presence, a father or husband, is forcing me to take this trip. And I would rather not. I would rather have stayed wherever I was, not gone on this journey. So conceivably, this could be the same lifetime that harbor the connections I feel for the Civil War, or the antebellum era before the Civil War, right? Could easily have traveled across the ocean, been an early settler, and depending on the time frame, lived up until about the age of the Civil War, or maybe saw my sons go and fight in the Civil War. I'm not sure. And my family, I have family members that I'm sure who are so obsessed with the Civil War battles and militarily, obsessed with the Civil War, that there must be something in this soul group of my family, right? My dad, his brothers, my grandparents, my cousins. We all have this connection and interest in the Civil War. And I know, it sounds like a kooky Southerner thing to say, but I have history teachers in my family, and I'm a teacher, and there's just certain things that intrigue us, right? And this is a common thread we share, independent of each other even. So maybe that is something that we share in a past life kind of way. So anyway, that could all be the same lifetime. And again, I feel like I lived in a country, remote place, far from town, far from a city, certainly. And I feel like I'm living in a high elevation. I feel like I'm way in the Appalachian Mountains, and that this is my home. And once I'm there, I feel content there. I crave the mountains. I've lived at the sea. I've lived in coastal areas. I grew up being a short car ride from the beach, and I've lived in Florida, and of course I love the ocean. Who doesn't, right? Yeah, some people don't. And I loved being there. Absolutely adore it, and I still go on vacation. But y'all, I crave the mountains, and when I'm there, I feel like I'm on drugs. I feel high. I feel just a contentedness in my heart, and an exhilaration. My heart is skips a beat when I'm up in the mountains, and I just know that place. I just know. I don't know. And it feels like southern Appalachian Mountains, Blue Ridge, because I can kind of, the thing that gives me the chills is seeing the mist across the mountaintop, seeing the, blue mist kind of take over in the sky, kind of start turning this eerie, smoky color that engulfs the mountains with only little peaks peeking out here and there. Anyway, so it's a strong connection there, which it's hard for me to determine if that's a past life connection sometimes, or if that's a this life connection, because I do have ancestors that were from that area, and I'm from the foothills, and I live in the foothills of the mountains now, so it is kind of a part of this lifetime too, you know what I mean? So it's hard to say 100% sure that it's a past life, but I'll tell you what, anybody who knows me, they know this. They know that interest of mine. They know that I have obsession with folklore and customs of mountain people. Sorry about that. My camera messed up. So anyway, I guess if anybody says, and there's the belief that a person can determine their past life based on what their interests are in this life, then that would definitely be one of mine, being an early American settler in the Blue Ridge area. Okay, so I wanted to show, and then I'm done. This is a long-ass video, I'm sorry, but kind of made a timeline of how this could all possibly fit together. Okay, so the Viking Age seems to be the first in this string of lifetimes that I've talked about here that I believe I've had. And then it would be followed probably by the Ireland lifetime. And then I've kind of connected the ship journey with the Appalachians and the life as a settler, being a homesteader. I feel like that could all possibly be the same lifetime. And then the Native American life would be the next one, most likely. The Edwardian era would be following that one pretty closely. I feel like there's not a lot of time between the Native American lifetime and the Edwardian lifetime. I feel like those are back to back. And then there's some space here, and I feel like the Vietnam War lifetime was next, and then that would make sense. I was born in 1980, so, and I know the Vietnam War went on into the 70s, but I don't know how you just know things sometimes, right? Feel like the me of that lifetime never saw the 70s. And I have a unique birthmark. It's actually 2 birthmarks close together, and they're on my spine. And I was always very self-conscious of it as a kid. I didn't even want to wear bikinis and stuff when I was a younger girl. Now I don't think about it as much, but they're kind of, they're like a brown tannish color. They're not terribly ugly, but they're rather large, and they are side by side right atop my spine. And there's a theory of thought that these scars or birthmarks or things that we're born with on us could be carryovers from a previous life. And so if that is true, then that last life as a Vietnam soldier, perhaps I was shot in the back. Perhaps those are gunshot wounds. Anyway, so I know it begins at the Viking Age, and that's AD, right? So there's tons of history in the world before AD. I feel like I probably was a part of, earlier civilizations. And even just, I feel very ordinary. I don't feel like I've ever had, just an extraordinary lifetime where I did something completely history book, level of coolness or awesomeness. I just feel like a lot of my lifetimes have been me being a person, me doing what humans do, and that sort of thing. And I'm good with that. I'm not a priestess of Apollo. I'm not an Egyptian pharaoh, or I don't know if I have any connection to the Greeks. I don't know that I really feel that. The closest, and perhaps there is some interest there for a reason, the closest thing would be I am interested in the Minoan and the Crete civilizations. But I've just always kind of been a loner, so that was one thing that stuck out as I started looking at this. And I've always enjoyed nature. I really think that's why I'm here, in part, is that's why I keep coming back to this world, is because I can't live without Octobers. I can't live without the flowers and the trees. And if souls do choose a life path and purpose, choose to reincarnate in certain places and certain times for certain reasons, I think a big part of mine has always been attempts to make me make me become more evolved in the way I communicate with people, to help me evolve into a better, more social person, because I struggle with that. I'm not exactly the most social person. And then I also think I'm always meant to be a good steward of the earth, and that's tremendously important to me. So anyway, if you stuck with me throughout this entire video, I appreciate it. I hope that you'll respond in the comments below. And hopefully I'll make more videos, just not always having a lot of free time to do that. And I don't really like the sound of my own voice, so I'll stop now. But thank you for starting this, the Autumn Chick, and Danny, thank you for making your video. I loved hearing about your stories. I'm just fascinated by it, just absolutely fascinated. So until we meet again, many blessings.